Jane Goodall just passed away, and like so many, I've been reflecting on her incredible legacy. I had the honor of meeting her as a college student and even asking her a question face to face. Her answer has stayed with me for years, shaping how I see psychology, faith, and what it means to be human. Story time. In my introduction to psychology class, we had an assignment to create a bonobo ethogram, which is basically a detailed catalog of behaviors. At the Fort Worth Zoo, I observed bonobos and logged their actions hour by hour. It sounds simple, but it opened my eyes to the complexity of observation. My professor later told me that it was one of the best ethograms that he had ever graded. That moment gave me confidence and curiosity that would come full circle. And I don't say that to brag, but to set up what happens next. Jane Goodall came to speak at the University of Dallas later that year. And after her lecture, there was a very small VIP reception, about 15 people, including the university president, the president of the zoo, and 2 students were invited. And because of the ethogram, I was one of them. Jane was gentle and motherly in presence without being intimidating, exactly how she appears when you see her. At the reception, she answered 3 questions. 2 were from some of the community leaders, and 1 was from a student. And that student was me. I wanted to ask something real. As a Catholic, I believe humans are unique because we have immortal souls. But I knew that Jane didn't share that exact worldview, so I phrased it this way. I believe humans are different from animals because we have souls. I know you may not agree with that, but I also know that you see and say that there's a difference between us and even our closest relatives, the bonobo chimps. So, in your opinion, what really makes us different? And I asked this because tool making was once viewed as what separates humans from other animals. But Jane herself, through her observations of chimpanzees, found that they actually make tools. They fashion tools and they use them. So it wasn't that. But I also knew that Jane still saw a difference between humans and our closest relatives, the bonobos. So I wanted to know, in her opinion, what made the difference. So Jane smiles and in her usual kind way says, "That's a wonderful question." She explained that what she believes sets us apart is sophisticated language, the ability to communicate not just about the present moment, but about the past and about the future. Language that can convey history, meaning, and vision. And then she turned the question on its head. She said, for her, the question wasn't, why don't animals have this? But why do we? And with that gift, she said, comes a responsibility. The responsibility to care for our planet and all other living things. It wasn't adversarial, not at all. It was tender, it was wise, and it stayed with me. And as the years went on, I continued to contemplate what her words had stirred in me. Clearly, we do have different worldviews. Yes, I believe that what makes humans truly unique is that we have immortal souls, that we are created in the image of God. But Jane's answer helped me to see another dimension, that we are also a storytelling creature. And as a Catholic, that connects deeply with salvation history. The Bible itself, God revealing himself through human words, inviting us to place ourselves in his narrative, finding our way into salvation history. Our ability to tell stories is part of how we make sense of our lives, how we understand meaning and our relationship to God. It's how we grow in faith and how we pass on hope. So Jane may not have shared my theology, but her insight made me think about God's plan in a whole new way. What I remember the most from Jane was not just her intellect, her wisdom, but also her tenderness. She was motherly and kind and generous. There's something about being in the presence of Jane that makes you feel connected and calm. She even wrote a book called Reasons for Hope, and that word hope is especially dear to me as well because it's my confirmation name. And it's also the heart of my work as a therapist today. Jane modeled hope without having to preach it. She embodied the gentle conviction that we can and must live responsibly with one another and with creation. As Catholics, we are called to care for God's creation. If you look in the Catechism, it's actually under the "Thou shalt not steal," where we are given the charge to care for God's creation. Of course, this has to be rightly ordered in a hierarchy of goods, Saints like Saint Francis, whose feast day is coming up, reminds us of the beauty of God's creation, that it's part of this story and that we have a relationship with it. The stuffed monkey that you often see Jane with, his name is Mr. H, and she tells the story of how it was given to her as a symbol of hope. She jokes that the person who gave it to her, a blind man, didn't realize that it wasn't a chimpanzee because it had a tail. Monkeys have tails, but apes do not. Nonetheless, Mr. H was there that day. Unfortunately, at one point, Jane's luggage was stolen off of a train, and it was Mr. H and some very important gifts by people in her lives. But when you see her later, she does have a replacement, Mr. H. So today, as I remember and honor Jane Goodall, I remember not just a famous scientist, but a woman whose presence shaped me long ago as a student and continues to form my thoughts today. Her answer reminds me of the sacredness of language, the gift of story, and the responsibility that we carry as humans. And it nudged me to see my own Catholic faith more clearly as part of a greater story of salvation, one in which we are all called to enter. Jane Goodall's life was one of compassion, responsibility, and hope. And for me, that short conversation is one that I will treasure forever.
If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. Even if it has a monkey kind of shape. If it doesn't have a tail, it's not a monkey. It's an ape, a tail's not a monkey.
It's an ape.